Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're someone that does a lot of video editing, then the chances are that you've run into the age-old editing problem of running out of hard drive space. It's a problem we all know and we all hate. And with every new project that you get, the situation is just going to get worse and worse and worse. So today, let me introduce you to a relatively unknown and small piece of software that could potentially save you an absolute ton of hard drive space, especially when it comes to archiving your old and completed projects. So what is this magical piece of software? It's called FCPx. A weird name, yes, I know, but as I said before, it's a small piece of software that packs a big punch when it comes to saving hard drive space. So the objectives of this video are to introduce you to FCPx, check, done that, and to explain how it works and to run you through an example of how I use it to save a ton of space when I'm archiving my completed edited projects. So I should probably start with a bit of context as to why FCPx is in my editing workflow. My day job is editing online educational videos to go online for, online educational purposes, really. Now, this means that on a day-to-day basis, I'm dealing with a lot of recorded footage because a course can contain anywhere from like 5 or 6 videos all the way up to 20 plus videos. And typically, when a professor comes in, they've got a slide presentation and they'll do multiple takes of each slide until they're happy with what they've said, and then they'll move on to the next slide. And so this means that I'll have 2 or 3 takes of the same slide, one of which is used in the final edit, and the other 2 or 3, potentially more, they're just sat there on hard drives, just wasting space and not doing anything. They're of no use to anybody. So FCPx takes an XML file of your completed video project. What it'll do is it'll scan through each of the original media files that you've used in that video edit. Now the magic of FCPx is that instead of copying across the whole of that media file for archiving, it'll scan through the media file and only take the snippet of footage that is actually used in the final edit. That's essentially how FCPx can save you an absolute ton of space when you're archiving your projects. So I suggest that we jump on the computer right now. I'll walk you through an example and it'll all make a hell of a lot more sense when you see this little piece of genius software in action. So here we are in Final Cut Pro 10, and as you can see, I've got an edited video up on the timeline down here. As I said, this is a video for work, and hence why the video viewing window in the center is blurred out, just for a little bit of privacy there. So with this completed video, I'm ready for archiving this project with FCPx. Now the first step in doing that is exporting an XML file of this completed and edited project. To do that, we select the project that we want to export and we go File down to Export XML. Typically what I would do is I'd wait till I've got a few different videos that I want archiving, and then I'd batch process it. So I will export the XML. There is a few different options to select for exporting your XML. 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure you're just going to be using the general option. However, I leave it up to you to do a little bit of research online to find out what kind of information you need to be exporting with your XML for it to accurately copy across a few archives. The general for me is great because it logs all of the editing information, so cut points, in and out points and everything. It'll keep information on titles, markers, any animations that I've done, keyframe animations, and that pretty much covers all my bases. And we also have XML version down here. I currently have the 1.7 version selected just for a little bit of backwards compatibility if we need to pull a project out of the archive to work on it later. But yeah, if it's just you and you know that you're always going to have an up-to-date system, then you can go ahead and select the 1.8 version. Now, I've also should specify that you want to set up a kind of dedicated archive space for doing your archives. For me, I've just set up this dummy project on my desktop, and in this I've set up a folder for the video that I'm going to be archiving. Obviously, if I'm batching, then I'd have like 6 or 7 of these different folders specifically for each video that I'm archiving, because there's going to be XML files in there. There's also going to be all the media that gets consolidated into that folder. Okay, so you select the destination and then hit save, and then Final Cut will quickly export out an XML file. Now let's go to the Finder, and in the Finder we'll navigate to the project file that I just set up, and here we have our XML file that is all ready for using in FCPx for archiving. So let's pull it up, Works4X, and this is what Works4X essentially looks like. Yep, it's pretty simple looking piece of software. If we have a look up in the preferences quickly, you've got an option here for setting trim handles. So for every segment that it copies out of the original media, it'll take that in and out point plus 2 seconds each side, just as kind of trim handles, as it says here. Audio processing, I copy the audio without losing any metadata, syncing clips, and you can allow the program to send off information on how you're using it. In the theme tab, there's also, you can pick between light and dark, and media locations. You can also set up specific access to certain files for Work4X to use when it's doing its job. So yeah, that's pretty much the basic preferences that you have there. Now, how do you actually go about using the program? Well, obviously you want to load up your source Final Cut Pro XML file. So we will open up the XML file that we just exported from Final Cut. What it will do is it will go through and inspect the XML file, compare it to the original media that it's found in the location where your media is stored for that project, and it will come up with this information, which is kind of, you know, a bit of a breakdown of the space saving that you can do. So it's analyzed the project, seeing the original project has 2.52 gigabytes of media that's used in the original project. Then with Works4X working its magic, it can get that down to 1.6 gigs, giving you a space saving of 0.92 gigabytes. On the surface, that doesn't necessarily sound like a huge space saving, but if you've got multiple videos, that all, you know, adds up and adds up and adds up. And obviously, the larger the project, the more media that you have on hand for use in the project, but that you didn't necessarily use, the greater the space saving. Typically, as I mentioned in my introduction, I'm space saving, you know, up to half, 2/3 of the size of the original media that's being used. Then you want to give your project a project name. Then you find the location, you just hit open and it will automatically go to the location where your XML file was exported to. You hit open and then you are good to go. The start button will be highlighted. You can just hit that and then it'll work its magic. And you can see here, it'll go through the XML file where it has media. It'll go to that original media source and then copy out the different segments of that original media source that you've used in your project. So here it's seeing that it's found this video file and it's copying out 15 segments, and here you can see which segment it's currently working on. And you just sit back, have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, or a nice beer if you're doing it in the evening, and just wait for it to get done.
A few moments later.
And there we go, it has finished processing. So now what we can do is, if we go into the folder for the video, and in this folder you can see we've got all of the different sections of the original media that have been copied out and separated out into here. So now we have just the parts of the original media that are actually used in the final edit. Works4X generates a new XML file which it'll place inside this folder as well, and you use that XML file there for importing this light version of your video back into Final Cut Pro 10, which I'll show you now. So I'll go back up into Final Cut Pro 10, File, Import XML, and then from there we locate through to the video archive thing that we have here, and then the new folder, and we find this newly generated XML file. We select that, we hit import, and it will bring in that project. So it will create a new event in your library with the name that was originally printed in the XML, and it'll also create a new project in Final Cut Pro with the name that you gave in the Works4X project. You can pull up that edit and you can see it is exactly the same as what I previously had. So this is the space saving magical wizardry that is Works4X. So there you go, Works4X, what it is, how it works, and an example running you through how I go about using it in my editing workflow. Hopefully I've given you enough information for you to make an assessment as to whether it's a piece of software that you might be interested in using, and if you do end up using it, why not comment down below, tell me how it's going. You know, what were your highlights of using the software? Was it exporting the XML? Was it watching it working? Riveting stuff. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed, what the hell are you doing? Subscribe, thank you very much. Just go on, thanks. And I'll see you in the next video. which will be coming out when it's ready. When it's ready. You can't rush art. Bye. Yeah, bye.